Empty streets, abandoned homes, the haunting relics of a nuclear nightmare. For nearly 7,000 people, this was once home. But on March 11th, 2011, a tremendous earthquake and deadly tsunami triggered the worst nuclear crisis in Japan's history. I'm Kyung-la in Tokyo. Nearly 2 months ago, this country was hit by twin disasters. The strongest earthquake in the country's history, followed by a devastating tsunami. In the aftermath of these two tragedies, a new problem.
Word of a state of emergency at a Japanese nuclear power plant.
A nuclear power plant near the epicenter was badly damaged, causing radiation to leak out. As these events unfolded, it became clear Japan would be confronted with a major challenge, and its entire relationship with nuclear energy would be called into question. On March 11th, 2011, at 2:46 p.m. local time, a 9.0 earthquake hit Japan. For minutes, panic as the country experienced the most powerful tremor in its history. Within the hour, as those still shaken by the earthquake try to make sense of what had just happened, another disaster. A 30-foot wall of water crashes into the coast of northeastern Japan, obliterating everything in its path. 5.5 hours after the quake, the Japanese government closed 4 nuclear power plants closest to the epicenter of the quake. At 5 a.m. the next morning, a nuclear emergency was declared at Fukushima Daiichi. The plant's cooling systems have been badly damaged. They're no longer able to cool the reactor's radioactive fuel rods. And in the following hours and days, the situation spirals. Explosions, 3 in total. Melting fuel rods react with water pumped in to cool the overheating reactors, producing a buildup of hydrogen. Seawater is even dumped in an attempt to cool the nuclear material. Soon, news that higher levels were detected around the plant. Contaminated water from the reactors was leaking into the sea. With every new problem, a stark realization took hold. The situation in Fukushima was unstable. In a rare TV address, Japan's emperor called the crisis unprecedented. He spoke of the unpredictable nuclear crisis that was unfolding in his country. 1 month after the start of the crisis, another major development. Japanese authorities upgraded the severity of the disaster at Fukushima to the highest level, a 7 on the nuclear disaster scale. This puts it on par with the worst nuclear disaster in history, Chernobyl. The revised assessment means that Fukushima is now a major accident with wide consequences. Environmental group Greenpeace had called for a level 7 rating 3 weeks earlier.
It is Japan's Chernobyl. From our point of view, is even worse than Chernobyl, because we have 3 reactors with huge problem with radioactive release. The 4th reactor has lost a lot of the spent fuel, and on top of that, where the accident happens is quite a densely populated area.
The once densely populated area around the Fukushima nuclear plant now reduced to ghost towns. 78,000 people were evacuated from a 20-kilometer radius in the immediate aftermath. Then calls for a larger exclusion zone. Meanwhile, the U.S. Embassy in Japan recommended its nationals evacuate at least 80 kilometers from the plant.
From now on, it's more detailed monitoring in the ground, on the air, so that we can draw a so-called contamination map. And it's not only the circle area, it has to be depending on the wind direction.
This town is outside the exclusion zone. Higher levels of radiation have been detected here. Authorities are monitoring these so-called hotspots closely. There's no word on when residents will be allowed to return.
The day-by-day radiation is going down, but the cumulative radiation is still going up because still gas is leaking. So we have to be very careful the long-term impact on those area people who may come back and live there.
But it's not just the exposure from the air. Exposure from food or water is also a concern.
I'm anxious about my farming. I'm checking out the radiation dose of the soil now. Otherwise, I cannot begin to grow crops.
In the weeks following the initial quake, food exports from Japan were heavily scrutinized, several countries even banning exports from the country. The Japanese government promised to monitor all export products closely. Unfortunately for the farmers here, just how long this will last is still unclear. This is what a nuclear fallout looks like 25 years on. A ghost town is all that's left. Authorities mobilized 200,000 people from an evacuation zone that was the size of Switzerland.
Chernobyl, of course, that's a very different accident. It was an explosion. The reactor went through a nuclear excursion, started a large fire. There was no containment. There was smoke and all of the radioactive material spreading out over the region.
240,000 cleanup workers received high levels of exposure in their attempts to contain the radioactive debris.
There are some farmlands that they're still not using because they were badly contaminated. They cut down forests and buried the trees. Unless something dramatic happens, we're not facing that kind of cleanup in Fukushima. The reactor cleanup at Chernobyl has not yet been undertaken. They just covered it with concrete, and it's sitting there buried in a large amount of concrete. And I think what we're seeing now that's more similar to 3 Mile Island is the 3 reactors in Fukushima. 3 of them have had significant amounts of melting. This material is a slumped, it melts and then kind of oozes down, and it's sitting on the bottom of the reactor vessel. This is going to be a very large cleanup operation.
Fukushima, like Chernobyl, will be remembered as a major nuclear accident. The question now is, what impact will it have on the immediate future of the nuclear industry?